We're doing all the things. Let's just get in here real quick. Get started. Make sure everything works. Well, see, isn't that nice? Sometimes the Facebook feed starts automatically and sometimes it doesn't. So you never know what's going to happen. I'm live here. I'm live on TikTok. For the TikTok people who are like, that's the majority of my audience. I am doing something different tonight. So for the best experience, go to my link tree. Anyway, golly, so much has happened. It's insane. So much has happened. Kamala Harris, Democrats. Kamala Harris. I got the numbers. I think all the conversation needs to start there because I don't understand how we get to a place where Kamala Harris is viewed as like she's the savior of the Democrat Party, right? She's coming in and she's wildly more popular all of a sudden in the polls than Joe Biden was. And Joe Biden was the presidential candidate who we were told got more votes than any president in the history of the United States. Now, this person, Kamala Harris, got 844 votes in the 2020 Democrat primary. She was not just an unknown. She wasn't an unknown. She was a prosecutor in California. This isn't an unknown person. She was just wildly unpopular. And what gets me about this is nobody's questioning. Nobody's questioning it. Nobody's doubting the fact that Kamala Harris now suddenly is incredibly popular. And I just don't understand how that happens. How does somebody who is that unpopular, insanely unpopular, and here's the thing. There's another part to this, but let me get through this part. Let me just get through this first. There's so much going on. How does somebody who's that wildly unpopular get all of a sudden is viewed as the savior of the Democrat Party? She's leading Trump. Trump went from, this was going to be a landslide election in Donald Trump's favor. And I'm not a Trump fan, but this was going to be a landslide election in his favor. And what the Democrat Party does is something that the Democrats have hated in the past, which is subvert the Democrat primary process, subvert what the voters wanted, and say, we're just going to choose a candidate, the party that says we have to save democracy, okay, is going to subvert the wishes of their party. They're going to subvert the primary process, simply select a candidate, and from that, now she's the one. This person was absolutely rejected by Democrats in 2020. Absolutely rejected by Democrat voters in 2020. They wanted nothing to do with her. 844 votes. She got roasted, destroyed. Flat out destroyed by, Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard? Yeah, destroyed her, and essentially ended her bid in the Democrat primary, put her to sleep. And if you Google Tulsi ends Kamala on YouTube, you'll watch the video. And so now you start getting into the thing, right? You start getting into the policy part of this. And I said this in 2020. This is what I don't understand. This is what irritates me about run-of-the-mill Democrats. In 2020, what you ran on was George Floyd, criminal justice reform, systemic racism, all these things. This is what you ran on in 2020. And who did you vote for? You voted for the person who wrote the 94 crime bill and a prosecutor in California who did all kinds of shifty things to African-American men, keeping them in prison longer than they should have been, extending prison sentences for cheap labor, withholding evidence to exonerate people on death row. This was a shady prosecutor in California, padding her stats at the expense of African American men, and a person who wrote a bill responsible for the second wave of mass incarceration of African Americans. That's who the Democrats nominated and voted for because they had to do it because Trump was a racist. I don't understand. And you guys were mad in 2016. Was it 2016 when Bernie got booted? Bernie gets booted, right? And everybody's mad because the Democrats aren't listening to the people. They're not listening to the voters. They're not paying attention to what we want. Okay. So this time, they lie to you. They literally lie to you about the mental condition of the President of the United States. They do this for months so they can get past their primary process. As if Joe Biden's mental capacity just suddenly fell off a cliff. As if all of a sudden Joe Biden was incapable of running the country and running for re-election. As if it happened on the night of the debate, right? We all know that that's not the case. So we get all the way through the process. We get through the primary process. And we have our nominee, right? And so here we go. It's going to be Biden. It's going to be Harris. Biden's getting crushed. We know they can't hide the fact that his mental facilities are see, okay. So for those of you watching me on YouTube and for those of you watching me on Facebook, this is why I'm doing what I do on, and I'm using multi-platforms, because this commentary that I'm making right now, this commentary got taken down right now on TikTok. I'm going to just hold this up, right? Where am I at here? Oh, I can't see my, hold on a second. See if you can see it. See what that looks like. Live access removed. Anyway, it just got taken down. I'm spouting actual facts about what's going on here, right? This is what happened. And they take me down, right? So anyway, that cracks me up. But the fact of the matter is that this is what happened. So the voters come in, they vote. Obviously, it's not a real primary because you have a sitting president, right? You have a sitting president, and so that's not a real primary. Now, if they had been honest in advance about what was going on with Joe Biden, what his actual mental health issues were, what his capabilities were, had they done that out of the gate, well, you'd have a very different looking process here, wouldn't you? You'd have a very different looking primary. You'd have an actual voting primary where Democrat voters would get to make a choice. And I find it amazing that the voters are just kind of okay. They're just kind of okay with what happened. They're just going to allow that to happen to them again. Nobody's raising a stink. The Republicans are, of course, which is what you would expect, right? It's what you would expect the Republicans to do. They're going to make a stink about it, and all. So let's say you're a Democrat, and I'm going to kind of disregard what the Republicans are saying, of course. But at the end of the day, don't you? I don't understand. So anyway, none of the Democrats are making a stink about this. None of the Democrats are angry. I don't hear any Democrats going, "You subverted the process." I find it amazing that this is what happens. Anyway, so they're just choosing the candidate. Just the elites in the Democrat Party are going to simply choose the candidate, and the Democrats are just going to eat it. Just live with it. That's just the way it's going to be. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. The world's a crazy, crazy place right now, and of course, the just crazy, just crazy. So anyway, I have 7 days of access removal here on the old TikTok machine. They have reviewed my live. Every time I go live, they suspend me, and you tell me what's misinformation. I'm simply saying that, hey, we knew, right? Anyway. Anyway, so I got some stories I want to bring up here. Just kind of getting my live feet back under me, if you will. We're going to start with this story here. I'm going to switch this over here. You guys bear with me as I am, in fact, my own producer. So you have to bear with me just a little tiny bit, right? So let's see what we got here. I've run for public office. Kamala Harris is exactly the kind of candidate voters want now. Not 4 years ago, but now. So let's take a look. It's hard for me to not get emotional about Vice President Kamala Harris's candidacy. The American people are just starting to notice what an incredible experience and exciting leader she is. But for those of us who followed her long career, that's the Kamala Harris we've always known. We didn't know it 4 years ago when none of us voted for her. During her time as Vice President, she's always been loyal to President Joe Biden. Loyalty, by the way, is not a marker of a great leader. Sorry. However, as soon as Biden made his decision to leave the race and endorse as vice president, America finally had the chance to see the real Kamala Harris. They didn't get the chance to see it. When she was the prosecutor, senator, everything she's done prior to this been fake? That wasn't the real Kamala we've seen in politics for all these years, I guess? Okay. Anyway, and that's what Harris was showing the American people. She came out as her full self. She came out powerful. Has she done a press conference yet? Can anybody confirm whether or not this person has done a press conference yet? It's just, the whole thing is crazy. Let me see something here. So, and that's what Harris has shown. However, that doesn't mean it's an easy few weeks for Harris to face baseless attacks over her racial identity and qualifications. Let's see what that. I always like to open the Trump attack on black and Asian. Trump's attack on Kamala Harris was an attack on me. No, it wasn't. Here's what drives me nuts about this kind of a. Give me a second. I'm trying to bring my brother up here. We're working out some software where I can bring guests on. We were actually planning on launching our own podcast. So, as a woman of color, so Democrats find it. Here's a crazy thing about Democrats for me, is Democrats find it more offensive. So let's say you're a person who wraps themselves in a race in order to garner votes, right? And a Republican happens to call you out on that. The Democrats find it more offensive. The Democrats find it more offensive that somebody is calling you out on that than the fact that you are wrapping yourself in a race for political advantage, right? So think Elizabeth Warren, right? Pocahontas. Think back to that. The Democrats were outraged that Trump named her that, would call it, now it's racist, it's horrible, I can't believe you're saying this about her, calling her, this is racist, it's offensive, it's insulting. And what gets me on that is, okay, that's fine. You can say that. I can understand the point that calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas is racist. Fine. Okay, if that's what you want to, fine. Was it not worse that that Elizabeth Warren assumed the identity of a Native American for her own benefit? Isn't that worse, people? Democrats out there? Isn't that the worst thing? Has Kamala Harris used race? I haven't followed her career close enough to, and I don't have the resources to go back and search old speeches and all this, that, and the other, where she has held herself up as an Indian woman. I have heard statements from like broadcasters and stuff saying, "Oh, the first Indian woman to do this, the first woman of Indian descent to do that," and it makes sense because of her family history. So I'm not knocking her for embracing her Indian heritage above her African American heritage when her African American father was not present in her life and her Indian mother raised her. It makes perfect sense that that's who she would identify with, that's what would be her kind of how she viewed herself as somebody of Indian heritage. Makes perfect sense. But then doesn't it become offensive when she then, if this is what she did, chose to, now I'm going to, because it's beneficial because of the political climate, now I'm going to use the fact that I have African American blood to be able to claim African American heritage. And for me, look, so here's an interesting thing, and I really do wish my brother was here. My brother is African American. I'm half African American. I didn't grow up in the culture. I didn't grow up around African Americans. I mean, I lived in a pretty diverse area when I was growing up, but I would never claim African American heritage for a political. I just don't feel like I'm entitled to. I don't agree with affirmative action laws. Okay. I don't agree with them. I think they're wrong. I don't think we should be making decisions about who's most qualified for what based on race. I don't fault anybody for doing it. Go do it. Knock yourself out. I guess I have put it on applications, so maybe I've claimed it. Whatever. I don't think that's the reason I'm not in any kind of special position. I'm not running for elected office. I think and I have ran for elected office, and I don't really think that I've dug into the race card bag of tricks when I've ran. I could look at my old speeches. I don't think I've ever said anything that referred to it. I guess my point is this. Democrats have a tendency to wrap themselves in the veil of race when it is convenient and or politically expedient for them, right? We remember the ridiculous, I can't think of anything more cringy than the Democrats where they were wearing the African garb and came out and kneeled. I mean, what kind of nonsense? So the Democrats have no problem doing this, wrapping themselves in the garb of a race in order for political expediency. And so I guess my question would be, isn't that the more offensive thing than calling out a person who's doing it? I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. I'd love to have some. Give me something. Somebody tell me something in the comments here. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just seems like that's the more offensive thing, and it seems like Democrats are very, very comfortable doing that. So I don't know. The other thing with the Kamala thing, it just irks me. I don't know how you can talk about race and systemic racism being one of your top issues and say I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. I just don't see how that's possible. I don't have a lot else. Oh man, Tampon Tim. This might be funny. Let's see what this is. Oh, this is the guy who got. So here's the other thing about this is what surprises me a little bit about the Tim Walz pick as the vice president. I guess that's something that's worth talking about a little bit. Tim Walz is vice president. I'm from Wisconsin, and Minnesota's. One of the reasons I said it couldn't be Gavin Newsom was because I think Gavin Newsom is too radical and too far to the left for the majority of Americans. I don't think the majority of Americans would support a Gavin Newsom. I don't think the Democrats want to put California under a spotlight because of how bad the policies in California have worked out. So I just don't see that. So I thought, no way there's going to be Gavin Newsom. Now, look, I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Wisconsin. I lived up there for 20 years. And I'm telling you, Minnesota's the California of the Midwest. And I think you start peeling back the layers of what's going on in Minnesota, the fact that Minneapolis burned to the ground in 2020, that's the kind of the birthplace of the defund the police movement. You have had skyrocketing violent crime in their major cities in Minneapolis since 2020. I think you're going to put Minnesota, I think a lot of people don't understand what's gone on in Minnesota over the last 4 years. And if you put Minnesota under a microscope, I think it's going to shock a lot of people what's going on in Minnesota and how bad things have gotten in Minnesota in terms of violent crime. And it's going to be almost the same effect as having a Gavin Newsom on the ticket. And what's interesting to me is, I heard this earlier today, is that essentially there's two Kamala Harrises, right? You have a Kamala Harris that is the kind of the really far left, more radical candidate, more radical politician. She's a little further to the left and all that stuff. You have that Kamala Harris. And then you have the Kamala Harris that is essentially the corporate sponsored I'm going to do what I'm told to do candidate, which the only candidate who's not like that is Donald Trump. He's the only, which is where all the institutional resistance to him is coming from. That's not an endorsement of Donald Trump based on his 4-year presidency. He's not my guy. But so what you saw from Kamala, I think what you saw from the nomination of Kamala Harris is the corporate sponsored. I'm gonna be a yes man for the military industrial complex, for big business, for the special interest groups. I'm gonna be that yes man for them that they're looking for. Which, here's the sad thing about the American public, is that's the safe thing, because the status quo feels safe. That's what we've been doing for the last 75 years in this country. Certainly at the presidential level, is just electing yes men. So from that perspective, okay, that's Kamala. Will try and bury her past. Even her prosecution record might even win over some moderates in smaller, more rural communities. Tough on crime stance plays well there, so that part of her, that might work out well. The thing with Kamala, though, is the thing with the selection of Tim Walz is it's going to bring that far left agenda forward, and I just don't think the far left ideology plays well. I think that the trans stuff, I think the trans stuff in particular, the open border stuff, kind of this far left economic stuff where wealth taxes and student loan forgiveness. I don't think that plays as well with moderates as Democrats think it does. Now, look, I'm not a political strategist, but you're going to have to defend with Kamala and with a Kamala Walz ticket. You're going to have to defend the far left. You're going to have to defend. You're not defending moderate Democrat positions. You're going to have to get up there and defend far left positions. I think it's going to be maybe the most interesting part of it will be we're going to find out where America really stands. Has America drifted that far to the left? Or is there still some moderation in the United States? So I'm getting a text or message here from Mr. Elmer in the chat. Talking about Minnesota has a 9% income tax rate. I lived in Minnesota for a while. They have incredibly high property taxes. They have high income taxes. Their sales taxes are high. I mean, Minnesota is insanely. It's the California of the Midwest. I can't think of a better way to describe it than the California of the Midwest. And Walz is more left of Newsom. Yeah, he's to the left. And so Kamala was not a moderate Democrat coming into this thing. She's to the left, and I think her nomination coming after the primary is an attempt to, first, they don't want, the interesting thing is because it's August, is do you actually have time to mount a campaign against Kamala Harris? She's going to be a lot like Joe in this campaign. They're going to keep her out of the spotlight. They're going to keep her from speaking. She's not going to do a lot of public engagements. She's going to be on the teleprompter, not answering questions, not doing press conferences. I don't see I'd love to see a debate. And then they can just run this historic race. They're going to break out, they're going to run back the Barack Obama playbook. And if you don't I've already seen the post, right? If you don't like her, it's because you're racist. If you don't like her, it's because you're a misogynist. They're going to use the intersectional playbook of, you can't speak bad about her or you're a racist, misogynist, terrible person. And that's what they're going to use, and they're going to beat people over the head with it. And I think to this day, I still think people are scared enough of that to avoid wanting that conflict, to avoid wanting to face that at work, that they will cow people into silence. And that's a viable strategy for them that, we'll just play. This is the card. We're just going to play this card and see where it takes us. So I think that's the issue for me, as always, is that we are not working on solving any problems. We're not even going to talk about the problems. And this is where the Trump loyalty bothers me a little bit. Trump was president of the United States for 4 years, man. Massive budget deficits, CARES Act, $2.2 trillion. I don't think he was as terrible on the pandemic as people try to make him out to be, but he certainly had his issues there. As far as the deep state and gutting out the administrative state, no chance. Excuse me. No, he didn't come close to living up to that ideal, and I don't really have any reason to think he will in another term. I don't think there's an end to deficit spending. I don't think there's an end to our massively overgrown regulatory state, and that our regulatory agencies have all this power. I don't think I can't count on Trump doing anything about that, because he had 4 years and he didn't do anything about that. So it's really hard to say. I've always said kind of the best thing about the Trump presidency, I'll get to that in a second, but the best thing about the Trump presidency was there's no new wars for 4 years. I think when you look back on the Trump presidency, if you tune out the media, and you look at the first 3 years of his presidency, that was a very stable period of time globally. That was a very quiet and stable time in the United States and globally. The economy was strong, inflation was under control, no new military conflicts taking place around the world. Kind of a very stable. He did what he did against ISIS, whether you like it or not. ISIS kind of disappeared after the first several months of his presidency, bombed them into submission. So Trump was good on foreign policy. I liked that he talked to Kim Jong-un. Look, I was happy that Barack Obama was going to talk to Ahmadinejad, but of course the Republicans were incensed. So, okay. The Republicans were incensed that Barack Obama was going to talk to Ahmadinejad, but then they were perfectly fine with Trump talking to Kim Jong-un, or Kim Jong-il, and then the Democrats were incensed that Donald Trump talked to Kim Jong-un, but were happy that Barack Obama wanted to talk to Ahmadinejad. If anything illustrates what it means to be partisan and to not have an actual principled position on anything, but simply caring about nothing more than how your political party comes out of it, it's the difference of how the Democrats and Republicans reacted with Barack Obama and Ahmadinejad and Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. You just look at the reactions on Fox News, MSNBC. It's hilarious. Anyway, what I was saying is I've always found it fascinating, the hatred for Donald Trump. The hatred for Donald Trump and the Trump derangement syndrome and all that stuff, to me, has always been just as silly as the love for Donald Trump, right? To me, there's not a reason to love him as much as you do. Trump fans, MAGA fans, there's also not a reason to hate him and fear him as much as you do. Look, the racism stuff for me with Donald Trump is just, to me, it's insane. It's all innuendo. There's nothing really out there, and historical funding for forget the historical. Here, as a libertarian, I'm not happy about the historical funding for historically black colleges and universities. The federal government shouldn't be involved in that nonsense. So I'm not even happy he did it, but it's really hard to call a guy a racist when, he provided this historical funding for historically black colleges and universities. He had the very low black unemployment, which the president actually has very little to do with, by the way. Everybody wants to take credit for economic things. Presidents always get too much credit and too much blame. The First Step Act is probably the biggest piece of criminal justice reform, which is what, by the way, where's the criminal justice reform under the Biden administration? The First Step Act was a huge piece of criminal justice reform that disproportionately benefits black and Hispanics. So show me where, and then if he's this horrible, economic opportunity zones, another thing, I don't think the federal government should be doing this nonsense, but anyway, economic opportunity zones, thank you, Mr. Elmer, as another thing that was done for the black community. He did a lot of positive things for the African American community while he was president of the United States. It's a true statement for him to say. And so, and then what bothers me is if he's this horrible racist person, right? If he's this horrible racist person, why does the media constantly have to, literally alter video of the things he's saying to make him look racist? Wouldn't he just slip up and say a bunch of racist shit, and you wouldn't have to necessarily have the media coming in and clipping and editing videos to make it look like he's saying these things? It's insane. Um, it's crazy. So, anywho, that's kind of where I was at today. I just wanted to get in here and talk about Kamala. I actually haven't done live in a while. And like I said, my bigger audience is actually on TikTok. That's usually where I do better on live streams. But every time I try and talk about politics on there, I just get taken down and suspended for 7 days. And today it happened after 5 minutes of being on, on, and they took me down for misinformation because I said apparently I'm sure it has something to do with me saying that Biden was obviously mentally incapacitated, or they lied about his mental facilities, his mental capabilities, and I guess that's just flat out not true, apparently. Anthony, I appreciate all the comments. Appreciate you being in here the whole time, like a lot. So really thank you for that, because it's hard to get a stream going. If you are out there, please like it, share it, subscribe to my channel. This is going to be something that's going to be more regular now. I'm going to be bringing my brother on. We might even launch another podcast, or an actual regular podcast, not just a live stream. Anyway, I'm going to be back tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, and I'll have a whole list of news stories and stuff to talk about then, some economic stuff. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'll get that scheduled here first thing tomorrow morning so that there's a little bit more advance on it. And once again, thank everybody who is here. You guys have a great look at me. I finally got 3 concurrent viewers on YouTube. That's it. That's peak. It's peak. I might even have to stay on a little bit longer, especially with Jack in there, because he likes to comment. He was in my last one. Thanks, Jack. I appreciate that. Yeah, the censorship is crazy. So it's crazy how bad the censorship has gotten. And it's terrifying. What scares me about that is we have these tech companies, huge tech companies, in control of everything. And I'm setting myself up on Rumble. And what bothers me about this, what bothers me about the censorship side of this, is that it's pushing people into echo chambers. It's pushing ideas into the darkness. Bad ideas need to be exposed to the light of day so that they can be criticized in the public square, and so that we are being exposed to different ideas, and that those ideas aren't being pushed down into the darkness. It's how you have this guy who took a shot at Donald Trump. That's how people like this happen. That's how you end up with these incidents in schools happening. You allow these people into the dark. You push people into the dark. They don't get exposed to any other viewpoints. They get radicalized, and then they go out and commit some kind of a horrendous crime. Not only that, but it polarizes the country. People, you can't talk to anybody because we're not exposed to ideas we don't agree with on a regular basis, because the idea of hearing something offensive, it should be, in the minds of some people, should be illegal. We should never hear something we don't agree with. We're unable to communicate as a people. This isn't making us closer as a nation. It's driving us apart. We need to be able to hear and tolerate ideas that we disagree with and discuss them. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, you got arrests for comments made online on Facebook and X in the UK. They're literally locking people up. It's not just the UK, it's also Germany has locked people. You can go to prison for hate speech. This is the state telling you what you can and cannot say. And we don't have that. We haven't gotten to that point in the United States quite yet. But tech companies censoring the information that's available to us is incredibly dangerous to freedom of speech. Incredibly dangerous. And it makes our society far less civil for us to not be able to listen and hear each other's ideas and our thoughts and our opinions on things. And so, yeah, I just got kicked off. I did the stream. Jack, go back, watch the first 10 minutes of this when I'm done here. And you tell me in the comments section if what I said in the first 10, look, I made some assumptions about Joe Biden's mental conditions, but I don't think it's a leap, what I'm saying. The interesting thing is, like I said, we just aren't allowed to communicate. We aren't allowed to exchange ideas, and that's scary. Look, there's all kinds of crazy examples, conspiratorial, if you want to call it that. You can talk about like the Hunter Biden laptop and big tech not allowing that to see the light of day and all this different stuff. But the bottom line is, it's dangerous. It's just dangerous, and you're allowing. It's funny because we don't like these millionaires and billionaires and all that stuff, but boy, we like them when they censor out people we don't agree with. We don't have a problem with with speech being taken down by these big billionaire tech companies. So that's pretty funny. But yeah, Walls. Anthony's in the Facebook comment section. I got to figure out a way to meld up the comment sections. Yeah, so that we can so I can get all the comments in the same place. But yeah, Walls. We were talking about Walls being the Democrat vice president nominee and how far to the left he is. As somebody's from the upper Midwest who lived in Wisconsin, who's been up in that area, it's like, whew. It's Gavin Newsom without the charisma. It's going to be pretty interesting. So you could report on that, and it wouldn't be. Maybe we should do the news in other countries. Yeah, it's amazing. But we've had this media problem, this censorship problem in the United States for a long time. People see different news, very different news from news sources. We have here Time Magazine, big publications back in the day reported the news very differently overseas than they reported to the United States. And we've been dumbed down and isolated from real news and real information for a long time in this country. And I don't know if I'm like trying to get conspiratorial here, but it's not pretty stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to be back on tomorrow, 9 o'clock. My goal is the next few months to try and get on here at 9 o'clock and between 8:30 and 9 o'clock every night and go for at least 1 hour. That's my big commitment. To try and get something going here. And like I said, I got to get it going outside of TikTok because I can't do 10 minutes of live on TikTok without them kicking me down. But we see it and we aren't doing anything about it. Well, I'll tell you this. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I do. So I'm here, which does nothing, by the way. I am the state director for the God damn it, for the Oliver Chase campaign here in South Carolina. I'm probably going to run myself in 2026 as part of the reason I'm trying to create a social media following so that I have some kind of momentum to propel me as a third-party candidate. I've ran for office twice myself already in the state of Wisconsin. What I would say is that we don't have enough people just getting involved. Look, I get it. You got to vote red team, blue team because I'm scared of the other guy and da-da-da. Okay, fine. Go ahead and vote for who you got to vote for. But God dang it, get involved with the third parties in your state. Donate some money to the libertarians. If you have liberty ideals, donate some money to the libertarians. Go canvas for the libertarians. Go get involved with your county affiliate and try and get libertarians or liberty-minded people elected to local school boards. Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot. God, everybody wants to do something that appears virtuous or they can put on a resume or brag to their friends about. Yeah, going to the city council meeting, going to the city council meeting and all this other stuff may not be sexy and it may not, be something you can brag about later on or whatever. It doesn't maybe check the virtue signal box, but that's where the work's getting done. The left is great at this stuff. The left is absolutely wonderful at going out and infiltrating institutions. They're great at it. They're organized. They're hardworking. They don't when the election's over, they're going to keep going and they're going to keep doing the things that they do. So if you want to counter that, if you actually want to take the country back, you can't just show up every presidential election season and go, why aren't we doing, we're stuck in this two-party system. We got to vote for the lesser of two evils. You got to be involved in between. Look, right? You win games in the off season. So I don't know how else to put it than that. You win games in the off season. So I'm gearing up. I'm trying to gear up this platform of mine, this tiny little platform that I have here, and grow it over the next 2 years going into 2026. And I want to do something meaningful then. But in between now and then, over the next few months, am I going to be out door knocking? Am I going to be out calling volunteers to try and get people involved in the Chase Oliver campaign? You're goddamn right I am. Am I going to do it in futility and in the darkness? Yep, I'm going to do that too, because because you win games. And then the problem is you got to keep that little coalition you build during when there's all the excitement around the presidential race, and you got to keep that coalition together for the next 2 years. So when you go into the next campaign, you're better equipped to make an impact. So that's my plan for the next 2 years. You're 100% right that people aren't doing anything, that we see it, that we know it. We've adapted to the fact that the corruption is so ingrained in our system that there's like nothing we can do about it. And that's not true, but the work is hard, and it comes with no glory. So on that note, that's a great little speech. I'm going to have to edit that thing out and post it in some places. On that note, I appreciate everybody who's here. Certainly appreciate those of you who've been with me. Anthony Elmer over on Facebook has been with me since this thing started. Thank you very much for jumping in here and being in the chats, being actively in the chat the whole time. I really do appreciate it. A.E. Berg, okay, there you go. Now I know who you are. I will be back